a really interesting perspective. I need to think about that. You know, I have a new mother-in-law. And I think we're close, but I always think just like, I don't know, I guess it's like stuff I've heard too, that like, that's her son. We, you know, like I just married her son. Granted, we made like a bond and a connection when I think we genuinely do have that, and we're fortunate, but a lot of people don't develop that. The only thing that makes us a family is your son, that one little middle piece. And if something were to God forbid ever happen to that piece, what would keep us? You know, that's a good point. I need to reflect on that.
Yeah, and it also, they don't have kids, so it's like it's really nothing holding me here.
Right.
Like for me, I would be like, I mean, I gotta keep in contact with you for the kids, but but if outside of that, I would be like, I hope you do well.
What is going on, XYZers, XYZ Nation? We are back in the building with episode 1 of our second season. I want to title this Joy and Pain in honor of Frankie Beverly, who is a cookout classic.
Yeah.
Joy and Pain, Maze, and Frankie Beverly. Shout out to you.
I've never heard that in that order. Maze and Frankie Beverly.
It's usually Frankie Beverly and Maze.
Yeah.
So when I get things out of order, it's because I'm recalling. And I'm like, something. What is it? Oh, yeah, Maze. Wait. But they also say his name. So that's why it's backwards.
Okay.
But yeah, so joy and pain as we look at this first chapter of Ruth. Oh, man. So I really don't have any.
Who are you?
Banter stuff to open with, and that is a very good question.
Who are we?
See, we did it perfectly the last episode, and then I just rant.
I knew we were about to go into it.
And all of that stuff. But I am the latchkeyed one himself, former X-Man. What up, my peoples? What it be though?
Oh my gosh. What it be though?
Representing Gen X. I'm Chris. And next to me we have...
My name is Moyo, the resident millennial. Turn up.
Nothing is gonna be what up though. Oh my gosh. I'm Jasmine. I'm your microwaver. And together we are Generational Scriptures.
Sweet. And
we do that good.
Because I was about to figure some other stuff out. And we actually had to do the intro.
Yeah.
So I'll edit all that up so you won't see none of it. In a blooper reel, maybe. All right. I really don't have an opening question.
Which might be good because we just talked about that.
Oh, right.
So, without an opening question, do we just want to dive right in?
Sure.
Can we talk about history?
Yes, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So give us some history, Chris.
I was going to say, because I don't got nothing for you.
Like, how did we get here, right? Ruth. We know that this book is one of the book of the histories, right?
Yes. Book of history.
We don't know who the author is.
No,
we don't know what the time period is. Minus
we know. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was like minus that is in the time of the judges, right? But that is a huge amount time period. Yes. So there's a lot of how do we get here? Who are these people?
And
how
that's a good question, right? Because and again, if you go back and watch last season, right? We wind up with Israel being in Egypt, in Goshen. We did not do Exodus, but Exodus is important, as well as Deuteronomy, Numbers, Leviticus. It's actually Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy is the order. But all of those are important because it talks about the formulation of Israel. And then once I get to Joshua, that's when the people of Israel actually take possession of the land that God had promised Abram way back in Genesis 12. So you get to see God forming his people. You get to see the people staying in Israel, good or bad, but then their treatment, staying in Egypt, good or bad, but then seeing the treatment of the people in Egypt. And God says, I see what they're going through, I'm paraphrasing, and I hear, right, their suffering. So now he's going to do something about it to pull them out. And that's why when you read, and God will refer to himself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, or he refers to himself as the God who brought Israel out of Egypt. He's referring back to that time after Joseph, which we just finished up. So now that they are in the promised land, and land has been divvied, right? Because that's one of the things we talked about and looked at, that they get to the promised land. And again, tying this back to last season, remember when the birthright was taken and given, so the land was going to be broken up, and some of the blessings that were given would be like, you'll be in the midst of another tribe, and it really won't exist, type of thing. So we see that, and land has been divided. So now Israel is in the land, they're occupying the land, and they need to figure out how they're going to rule and govern. Right? So at that point, and which is important, is you get to the judges, right? So each clan, each tribe would have someone who would govern. And what would happen is, when you read through Judges, is that Israel would be okay in terms of their relationship with the Lord. Then they would drift away, because although they have taken up possession, there may have been some other folks in that area that would then incline them away from worshiping the Lord. Right? So other gods, other rituals, other things that would say this isn't of God. And God says and tells them when they're traveling, right? They shall have no other gods before me, right? But now they're starting to do those things. So God has to reprimand them. They fall into trouble. Other people not just are in the area, but they take over and rule over and cause hardship. And after a while, they'll repent and call out for God, and God would raise up what they call a judge, was called a judge at the time. And that judge would lead that people against anyone who was coming into or who was oppressing them, eventually restoring them, and eventually getting that, because it was usually tribal, that tribe back into right relationship with God. But there was a pattern that became, that was seen. And that pattern is, I would be fine. And I think we do it sometimes today. We'd be fine with God, right? And then we sort of lose favor, lose the connection, lose the want to follow, right? Fall into other idols or other things. And then God's got to come in. He's got to reprimand them. He's got to do all that. And then they get restored, and they go through the whole process over and over again. A couple of the lines that you see in there was man did things that were right in his own eyes. I'm paraphrasing again, right? And you see that over and mentioned several times, because it's talking about their falling away from God. So why did I say all that? I say all that to say we get to Ruth, and we're talking about Ruth being in the time of Judges. So when you think and you look at Ruth, it also makes sense to look at Judges at least a little bit to understand the cycle of the people, and also the fact that everyone did what they thought was right in their own mind, which really meant like selfishness, if that makes sense. Meant that I'm going to do what I want to do, which sounds a lot like today, if you ask me. Right? And then juxtapose that mindset against what we're going to be reading in Ruth. So when I think, I don't know if that answered your history question, but that's sort of how I'm placing this. And when we read the first section, we're going to see I think that's why they say in the first section, this was happening in the time of the judges.
Yeah.
Right. The last thing I'll say is that I believe that I think I said I want to see where this fits, and right now my understanding of where this fits is it's a bridge type of book. It's going to take us from the judges, but then it's going to take us to the instantiation, the standing up, the setting up of kings. Right. So and that will have its own set of issues that come with it. So from a history fitting in how we got here, I think that hopefully that helps.
Yeah.
It's good context.
That helps.
And we'll get more as we go through the chapter.
Man. Woo. That was I had to dig. All right. So we are going to start off with reading, as we always do, verses 1 through 5 of Ruth.
All right. Ruth chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. In the days when the judges ruled, there was a famine in the land, and a man of Bethlehem in Judah went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. They went into the country of Moab and remained there. But Elimelech, the husband of Naomi, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. These took Moabite wives. The names of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. They lived there about 10 years, and both Mahlon and Chilion died, so that the woman was left without her 2 sons and her husband.
So we get introduced to, who do we get introduced to?
Ruth. No.
To Ruth, but I mean, I think it's more than just
all of them.
The whole family.
To an entire family.
Yeah.
Right? And then I think there's some ties to what we looked at in Genesis, right?
Yeah.
First one to me is famine. It comes famine again.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it's famines. And I also wondered if it was apropos that there was a famine. I'm not sure that this makes sense, but is the famine because the people are not right with God? And so this is God's way of dealing with them to get them to turn, type of thing. I don't know. That might be stretching it a little bit, but that's one of the things that comes to my mind when I hear it. And then we're also introduced to a name that we should remember.
Judah.
A tribe. Yeah. Judah. And we know Judah is important, right? So go watch the last season. Because it all ties. Isn't it wonderful? It just sort of ties
all
together.
ties together. Yeah.
So that always excites me. And the last tie I think that is interesting is they use the word sojourn.
Yeah.
Did y'all pick that up?
Yes.
So yeah, it's like when you think of sojourn, what do we think of?
Being somewhere for a limited amount of time. You're supposed to go back home.
Right. At some point.
Yeah. And we learned in our last season that these people be sojourning for too long.
Oh, wow.
For too long.
Yep. So I think there are already some ties that we see, but we get introduced to the whole family.
Yeah.
Who in the family sticks out to you all? Any name or any one stick out to you?
Not necessarily a person per se, but I thought it was interesting, and it could be completely unrelated, but looking at how Naomi lost her sons and her husband, and then looking at I thought about in Genesis when Judah's 2 sons died, and when you it's just so crazy, abruptly you're losing your family. Yeah, like this. Like that. And we started off with this. So when I initially read it, I was like, oh my gosh, okay, widow and childless. And now she just has the daughters, her her daughter-in-laws left. Like, oh my gosh, it was a lot. But I drew that parallel because I was like, I wonder, like I was thinking at this part, I wonder if the way things go with the remaining two, just the daughter-in-laws, is going to look similar to how it looked with the last son and Tamar with Judah. Okay. Like that was my initial thought when I first read it.
When you first read it. Yeah.
To me, what stood out is Moab, because again, going into like, why are we here? Why do we choose this place? And then I rabbit hole a little bit, but not rabbit hole because it's all the Bible. But they talk about how Moab was one of the sons of Lot's daughters Lot's daughters slept with him. Like they get him drunk, they sleep with him, and they have these kids. And one of those kids is Moab. And I believe that this Moab is that nation, right? Of the same people that came from Lot. So then I was like, oh, that's interesting. But why are they, to me, I was like, why are they considered like these outcasts if it's coming from Lot? But I guess Lot is not a part of the generation of, the blessed ones.
Right, because Lot is Abram's
nephew. Yeah.
Right. So Abram, the tribe of Israel, comes from Abraham.
Yeah, but it's interesting to me that they just kind of like everybody else that's not Abraham directly, like sons directly, are then like to the side.
Yeah, and so when I think of things like that, I really think of who God is revealing himself to. And it's right. So you get like the order of Melchizedek and other things that sort of intimate that God is also dealing with other people and revealing himself to them. But God revealed himself and said that he was going to choose someone from the line of Abraham, of Abram. And Lot didn't fall in there. So I'm not sure what they believe. And I think as we continue to read this, we'll see that they didn't believe as Abraham did.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we'll see that as we continue to read through here.
Yeah. The other thing I did write down actually for Moab was that they talked about in Deuteronomy that Moab wouldn't be a part, or the Moabites wouldn't be a part of the assembly of Yahweh. But we have a Moabite here, but a lot of times in the Bible, history is coming from the man. So maybe she's not like one of you can't be a part of the assembly, but she is a Moabite. And they say it so many times that it's like, why y'all keep telling me she's a Moabite?
Right.
So there's something there that we should be paying attention to, because it's repeated so many times that Moabite woman, no Moabite this, the Moabite that, and the da-da-da Moabite.
Yep.
Like, so why?
Right. So, and I think that's what we'll figure out as we continue to go through, right?
Yeah.
That's a good option.
Look at me, exactly. I was like, let me do my homework.
Woo, sweet. Oh man.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Did you have anything else?
I think we answered your question, unless you have more questions for this section.
No, but I do want to point out that this wasn't it almost reads like it was like boom, quick, fast, in a hurry.
Yeah.
But you notice it says things like that the husband died and then got married and then 10 years have passed and
so it was a while.
Yeah.
Right. So it wasn't like instant. But back to the sojourning thing, I always wonder, and I think to myself sometimes, do I just sit in places too long? And I wonder, if God has to do some things to try and move folks along, or God's going to do what he's going to do. But the big thing from this, that my takeaway is, I come in, I'm happy, let's get this picture of this nice family, right? And then I leave, and we talked about this last time with Tamar. I've got a widowed woman with no sons who lives in a time where you needed sons.
Yeah.
Right.
If you were going to be a widow, or you needed a husband or someone to look out for you.
Yeah.
Right. All right.
I want to also say that it's interesting how long they were married before they died, and nobody had kids. That's a long time.
That is.
Like in today's day, you would be like, 10 years, what y'all doing? Like, y'all planning to have kids or not? And you know, you're not supposed to ask people that anymore. But I'm sure back then it's like, that's a while.
Yeah. I mean, you think of some of the women in there. I mean, even Rachel, right? Or Hannah from Samuel, right? That was one of the things that was expected, was to have children.
Yeah.
And especially, again, male children, because that carried along the name and the ownership, which is important, which is what we'll see later, for land in Israel. But you know, it was important at that time. And it's a big point, because I remember it now, but thank you for bringing it up, that they did not have children, because it lends itself to the rest of the story.
Yeah.
Right. If there were children, it would be a lot different.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. One more.
Go for it.
Bethlehem.
Yes.
I kept seeing that it's supposed to be the house of bread.
Yes.
But we're having a famine in the house of bread.
Yeah.
And so I think it goes back to what you're saying. Are they being punished?
Right.
Or is it just like, some people said it was like wordplay, like the author, who we don't know, is just somebody who likes words and making things sound.
Yeah, I mean, it could be wordplay, but I have reasons for thinking that it may have been a period of punishment, and these are from Bethlehem, and the point is that it's Bethlehem in Judah, right? So it sort of gives us the lineage. And I think something I read said that there were each tribe had a Bethlehem, like a house of bread. So it's important that they said Bethlehem in Judah.
Okay.
That makes sense. Right. Okay.
So that is that the same Bethlehem that like Jesus was born in?
No, that I would have to look up. Let me see. I would think so,
because I didn't think Bethlehem, like, I kept seeing house of bread. I'm like, okay, but I thought Bethlehem was just Bethlehem.
Right. Verses 6 through 9.
Yes. Okay. Ruth chapter 1, verses 6 through 9. Then she arose with her daughter-in-law to return from the country of Moab, for she had heard in the fields of Moab that the Lord had visited his people and given them food. So she went out from the place where she was with her two daughter-in-laws, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. But Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, "Go return each of you to your mother's house. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. The Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you in the house of your husband." Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voices and wept.
Here we go, crying again.
Yeah, right.
Nah, but so she's without children, male children. Or any even grandkids, as was just pointed out. She's without her husband, and now it's time. She's made the decision that she wants to go back to Judah, right? And I thought it was interesting why it says the Lord had visited his people and given them food. So it's almost like he visited them, he came to them, or he released his hand from the famine, and now there's food prevalent there. And the fact that she heard it in the fields. So what was she doing at that point to even get food to support herself and her daughters-in-law? So I think this is just to say that, it's time for her to move, as well as, she's having to do whatever's necessary to make sure that she's eating and getting food and stuff, right?
Yeah.
But then it says that she rose with her daughter-in-laws. But they she winds up telling them not to go, and instead doing what?
They should go home.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I found that really weird. But after you mentioned that during a time where you needed sons, I figured, like, what can we do together? Suffer together? Like, there's nothing. We don't have anyone to care for us, and I feel like she felt like, in knowing what I know, like, what we're going to learn later, she felt like she wasn't going to have, they're not going to have a caretaker. She wouldn't have a caretaker. They couldn't do anything for her. You know, we see what happens later on, but they served no purpose for her at the time. So like, that's how I'm now reasoning why she would send them away. Because when I was like trying to reason why you would want to be alone. I mean, granted, there's food now, you know, but like you're gonna send your only, what would be your help, your hands, like all that away. Why? Girl, you're gonna be alone.
Yeah. It's also interesting to me. Let me ask it as a question. Where is she putting her hope right now?
That's a good question.
I don't think she's putting her hope anywhere.
No, you don't think so?
You're talking about Naomi, right?
Yeah, Naomi.
In the Lord?
You think so?
I don't know. I think that she is returning home because she heard something good is happening there. So it's like, well, let me just go back to my people instead of staying here and suffering. I can go home. Okay. But because we know that when she gets home, she's like, the Lord did this. Like I don't think she's putting her faith in the Lord or even in people. I think she's just like, I'm just going to go home.
Just going to go home. Yeah.
And it kind of starts off as if she was going to take them. Like,
right.
I think that's why you're saying they arose with her. So they start going and then she's like, but she then says to them, hey, y'all go back.
Yeah.
So maybe she thought at first like, yeah, y'all can go. Why not? And then was like, actually, what would be the point?
What's waiting for me when I get back?
Yeah.
What? And again, you're right, Jasmine. This will get even more pointed later, but you would be better off staying here.
Yeah, and we know that they don't necessarily like Moabites, or you weren't supposed to marry. Well, I don't know if you were supposed to marry them, but they aren't a part of the lineage that we want. So why come back here? Because people might not. People might not accept you guys.
Right.
Like I can go back and I'll be fine, but it might be hard for you.
Right. And it's vice versa, because when you're sojourning, you're not a member of that group. You're just there and sort of being taken in and under the laws that they have, right, for sojourners. And it's the same in the opposite direction.
Why did she say go back to the house of your mother and not the house of your father? That
was a good question to me too. I'm not sure. My initial thought was they didn't. I don't know.
That was really because it's a lot of women focus in here, you know, and I appreciate it greatly. But like from what I just know about the Bible, it's very man centered, very patriarchy, you know. So I was thinking like if they're gonna go back home, you would want to go back to even just for wordplay, like you're gonna go back to the house of your father because your father's gonna take care of you. If you go back to the house, like your mother's house, I just feel like that was very intentionally placed. Like why?
And you know what? Now that you say it, because they are daughter-in-laws hanging out with their mother-in-law. So maybe she's saying, instead of being with me as your mother-in-law, go back to your own mother.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Go back to your own moms, your own houses.
Okay.
You don't have to hang out with the mother-in-law.
God, yeah, I can see that.
So that just came to me, but that might be a reason why she said that, because it's really her focus, right?
Yeah.
Which is what she's concerned. Her concern is that she will not be able to. She doesn't bring anything to the table. She doesn't offer anything that can help them in the long run. Her hope is she sees her circumstances more than she sees the Lord's hand in anything.
Right. Yeah.
Or, as we'll see, and we may just have to read the verses and not even talk about them, but or as we see, she thinks that the Lord's hand is against her. And so why even come with me? Because if he's against me, then what else is there?
Right.
Yeah.
I do like that she almost gave like a blessing to them. May the Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead, and with me the Lord grant that you may find rest, each of you, in the house of her husband. So while she says go back to her mother, she ultimately says
go find a husband.
You need to have a husband too. Right?
Yeah.
So this is I don't know, sort of a sad. This is sad.
Yeah.
Because we start to see the plight of Ruth, but we see how I don't know. Have you all ever been around people who sort of, I don't know. It's like they broadcast it out when feelings, like when they're down. It's like, I don't want to say it affects, but it has an impact on everyone around them.
Yes.
Start pushing people away.
Yes.
And things like that. So it almost gives me that type of feel.
Yeah.
Ruth chapter 1, verses 10 through 14. And they said to her, no, we will return with you to your people. But Naomi said, turn back, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Have I yet sons in my womb that they may become your husbands? Turn back, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say I have hope, even if I should have a husband this night and should bear sons, would you therefore wait till they were grown? Would you therefore refrain from marrying? No, my daughters, for it is exceedingly bitter to me, for your sake, that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. Then they lifted up their voices and wept again, and Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clung to her. So we see the continued of the discussion. So they cried at the end, like, go back, y'all need to go home. And then they were like, no, we don't want to go. We want to hang out with you. And Ruth, what do you think about what I said, Ruth, but what Naomi says here?
She's she emphasizes the fact of things we've already said. I have nothing to offer you. I have no children. Right. I have no husband. I have nothing. There's nothing for me to give you. Now, what I do find interesting is like, and I guess we're talking about a certain time period, but like, why is that? That was all she felt like she could offer them. My children. And I was thinking earlier, like the connection between the mother-in-law and the daughter-in-law is only the sons. Mm-hmm. So once they're gone, there is nothing else that ties them per se. So now that she's husbandless and childless, go back, go off. Now I do find it kind of interesting that how it says that Orpah kissed her mother-in-law and Ruth clung to her. Mm-hmm. I think I missed that when I read this at first, because I was like, what happened to Orpah? She kind of just like, we hear a lot about Ruth, but then I never acknowledged the split. So like that was an interesting piece.
They had to have been really close. Yeah. Like, because if I have a mother-in-law, we are not that close. Okay. And I feel like if she was like, leave, I'd be like, all right. like not that I don't love you. Yeah, she's not that. It's not that I don't love you, but okay, I'm gonna go back to my people. Right. And it's nothing really tying us closely. So I get it.
That's a really interesting perspective. I need to think about that. I have a new mother-in-law. And I think we're close, but I always think just like, I don't know, I guess it's like stuff I've heard too, that like, that's her son. I just married her son. Granted, we made like a bond and a connection when I think we genuinely do have that, and we're fortunate, but a lot of people don't develop that. The only thing that makes us a family is your son, that one little middle piece. And if something were to God forbid ever happen to that piece, what would keep us? That's a good point. I need to reflect on that.
And it also, they don't have kids, so it's like it's really nothing holding me here. Right. Like for me, I would be like, I mean, I got to keep in contact with you for the kids, but but if outside of that, I would be like, I hope you do well. I hope you are all right.
That's wild. Yep. But that's a good take, because I didn't think of it that way. Yeah. And I don't get me wrong, I didn't knock Orpah for being like, I'm out.
Yeah, I didn't either. I thought that was a normal thing.
Yeah, me too.
But even the whole like, no, I want to stay, because she started off like, I want to stay. I want to stay with you. Right. But I think she also realized like, do I really want to travel all the way here? Do I really? Because she's explaining to you, you can't get anything out of this. And Orpah's like, you're right. Actually.
Yeah, that's what I was just about to say. Because you're right. They start off and they said to her, no, we will return with you to your people. So at that point, they were like, "No, we all in.
Yeah,
we going. We're going to go to you with you to your people."
Mm-hmm.
And then Naomi's like, "Well, look, come on, let me give you a reality check.
Yeah,
Right? I ain't got nothing to offer."
Yeah. And even if I had
that's how she was thinking.
Yeah.
She's like, even if I had a kid today, you gonna wait? Like, how long you gonna wait? How old will you be? Like, it's a lot to consider.
Yeah.
And they may still be young enough where they could go home and get married, have their own kids, and do all of that.
So what does this say about Ruth? Because just as Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, which we understand to indicate that she sort of went on her way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What does it say about Ruth that she clung to her?
I felt like it was like Orpah may see that if she moves on, there may be hope. And I don't know if the same was true for Ruth in the moment. Maybe not like long term, and like we clearly see things happen. But I feel like, okay, thinking like real world, right? If let's say, and I don't know all the nitty gritty details about like the background, but if let's say something happened to my husband, right? And I didn't have a mom, or if I didn't have a supportive mom, or if I didn't know what I was going to go back to, or like I had no hope for my future, or if I just had a super strong bond with my mother-in-law, ma'am, we stand together. Where you go, I go. I'm your shadow. We're not parting. Now, and especially if I didn't see anything happy, productive, positive happening in my future, based on my current circumstances, I would be like, oh no, I'm sticking to what I know is familiar. I'm sticking with you. You love me. I love you. We in this together, right? Yeah. But just my interpretation of how Orpah just kind of accepted what her mother-in-law was saying. Like, okay. I mean, she was clearly sad they wept together, but she understood, like, okay, I hear you. You're right. And there may be hope if I do as you're telling me. That's how I kind of interpret that. Hopefully, and we'll see the character development over time, but it just seems to me that Ruth felt like her hope was being put in Naomi.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
You have anything you want to?
I mean, it could just be personalities.
Could be.
Because I feel like I'm Orpah. I'm gonna be like, hey,
you said I'm Orpah.
I don't cling to people funny. I just don't attach myself that easily. Right. Yeah. So it would be, and even if I do, I'm very much okay, let's move on. It's only a few people in my life that I'm like, no, it's me and you, and that's my dad. I can't even say a few people. It's my dad. It's my dad and my children, because it's like that direct thing. But other than that, it is what it is. Okay. I should say my husband. That's a good thing to say.
So funny.
Anyway, moving on. I also think I want to posit something here. We talked about in the opening about the time of the judges, is how everyone did what was right in their own eyes. I wonder if Ruth, because I would like to think that just as Orpah had a place to go, that Ruth would have a place to go. And just like she told them, go back to your mothers, right? So they have places to go. But Ruth, being so concerned about the relationship, especially during that time, is sort of the eye-opening part, the sort of catalyst, the movement of these chapters that sort of provides some of the juxtaposition, the difference of sides between what you see in Judges. Judges has one of the worst stories in it. I'm not going to get into it now. That is in the Bible, in my opinion. And it's there because it's telling you just how bad the people were. They were, the stuff that happened to the woman of the story that I'm thinking of is horrid, horrible, heinous is the word I wanted to use. But then you go from seeing that action to now someone who has a place to go, has something else to do, doesn't have to cling to their mother-in-law, doesn't have to value the relationship that much. Now sort of valuing the relationship. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if that sort of plays a part in as we open the juxtaposition between what's happening in the time of the judges elsewhere and what's happening in the story, to sort of show that there are people who value these types of things and they aren't all out for self all the time. Right? So that's one of the things as I look at this from like the 5,000 foot view, 10,000 foot views that I sort of saw with it as well. Anything else from this? This is Naomi just doubling down.
Yeah.
And Naomi means pleasant. Mm-hmm. And she's just not in a good spot.
She's not pleasant right now.
She's not pleasant. And she's really down. And understandably so.
Yeah.
Understandably so.
Yeah.
All right. So next up, we've got verses 15 through 18 of Ruth chapter 1.
All right. Ruth 1, 15 to 18. And she said, "See, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law." But Ruth said, "Do not urge me to leave you or to return from following you. For where you go, I will go. And where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God.
Oh, yeah.
Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. May the Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts me from you." And when Naomi saw that she was determined to go with her, she said no more.
Wow.
That is dedication. Oh my gosh.
That is crazy.
See, now this is why I'm going to go back to the son thing, right? If we just think about, just in general, mothers and sons relationships, it's like your son's gonna ride for you. That's my mother. Like anything, everything, they ready to face the world. They will fight everybody in the world for their mother. That's the way I think about a mother-son bond, right? Ruth sound real son-like to me, you know. So that's why I'm like, where you go, I will go. I lay down my life for you. Like all of this is sounding very much like if Naomi had her sons. So thinking back to how she was like, "Go, I don't have nothing to offer you," and we're assuming that she has this perception that, you know, you guys were women, like there's no man here to care for us, to take care of us, to get food for us, nothing. She's now seeing that Ruth has a determination to care, like to be there and be that care for her. So not that Ruth can take the place of her husband or her sons, but she's offering such like comfort for her. And I just found that so like, dang, like, wow. I was like, what I do that? So, like, that's so crazy. I love that for her though.
Yeah. I thought this made me feel like Ruth definitely knows something about God. Right? Because she's saying, go back to your gods, go back to this. And then later on, she's like, no, your God will be my God. And then she says, may the Lord, as if like, I know who I'm talking about. And I'm going with y'all because I don't want to go back to those people. So she knows something that obviously Naomi doesn't know.
Well, when you say she doesn't know, what do you mean by that?
Well, and when we go to the next section, Naomi is in this place where she feels like God is like forsaking her. Like, I'm no longer riding with you, you on your own. And maybe she feels like it's because, I don't know, because they left. Like God has taken everything from her. So Naomi is like, it is what it is. I'm going to just be where I'm going to be. And Ruth is like, no, you serve a God who can do like she's saying, may the Lord do so to me and more if anything but death, right? Parts me from you. So she knows the power that God has. Mm-hmm. And I feel like she's like, we're staying together. I'm not going back. Yeah. So I think that's where we're like, that's what we were missing before. Like, what are you holding on to? Why are you clinging to her so hard? And the Moabites, there is some history of them that we know that I think they tried to pull the Israelites away from God by showing them different idols and different things. Mm-hmm. So that's where she's coming from. She's coming from these people who serve these other gods who she knows are not this God. Right. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Orpah maybe didn't get the memo, but Ruth was like, actually, no.
Yeah. Yeah. And we see that in this first sort of clause. And she said, see, your sister-in-law has gone back to not only her people, but her gods, as you pointed out, to her gods. Mm-hmm. It's not the God that Naomi serves.
Yeah.
It's their gods. Mm-hmm. Right? And so there is definitely this idea that they're not serving the Lord. Yeah. They're not looking to the Lord. They don't want to have and don't have the relationship with the Lord that Naomi and Elimelech and those people that came from Israel would and should have. Yeah. You go, girl.
Yeah, love that for you.
You go. And the attachment, I think you hit the nail on the head, is as much because of the Lord as it is because of Ruth.
Yeah.
Right. It's as much because of the Lord as it is Ruth. And I think it also shows, right, if Naomi has that view, because Naomi has lost too. She's lost her husband. Mm-hmm. And she has that view
Ruth.
Of the Lord.
You're even talking about Ruth.
Ruth, thank you. Yes. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to have the whole Joshua.
That was all the J's.
All the J's. Now I'm going to mix up Naomi and Ruth. But Ruth has some pain too.
Yeah.
Right? Because she's lost her husband. Mm-hmm. So is Ruth like, when I asked the question about hope, is Ruth having more hope in the Lord than Naomi is?
Mm-hmm. I would say so.
I would think so too.
Which is crazy because this, as you mentioned, she's a Moabite.
Yeah.
But yet she's saying your God, the Lord, Elohim, will be my God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow, that's so wild.
But here you are, Naomi, sort of trying to push us away, mm-hmm. being bitter, right? Not looking at your ultimate hope is in the Lord. Your circumstances and everything that's going on have clouded your view to the point where you aren't seeing the Lord as clearly as you ought to.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
Yeah.
Right. Wow. So cool. Anything else with this set of verses?
My favorite set yet.
It's favorite one. All right. And then, last but not least, verses 19 through 22.
All right. Okay, so Ruth chapter 1, verses 19 through 22. So the two of them went on until they came to Bethlehem. And when they came to Bethlehem, the whole town was stirring because of them. And the women said, "Is this Naomi?" She said to them, "Do not call me Naomi. Call me Mara. For the Almighty has dealt very bitterly with me. I went away full, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Why call me Naomi, when the Lord has testified against me, and the Almighty has brought calamity upon me?" So Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabite, her daughter-in-law, with her, who returned from the country of Moab, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest. Yeah. Wow.
Yep.
That sucks. Okay, so what I think about sometimes when you have those, like how you mentioned, you have those people who go through something and then they kind of disassociate themselves with the Lord. Like, why would you do this to me? Or the Lord has forsaken me, and why, like, if the Lord loved me, why would he put me through this kind of thing? That's kind of how I am seeing Naomi at this point. And it sucks because I think that I mean, I think I used to have the same kind of, maybe it's a little piece of that as well. But last season when we talked about like the Lord's plan, like the Lord has a plan and everything is lining up perfectly. You know, it doesn't feel perfect to us, but it is lining up perfectly so that the end result can happen. In the moment, you can't see that, of course. And Naomi is just devastated because she had multiple losses. And I just think it's really interesting how she's handling it versus how you said, like, Ruth also lost her husband. Like, she lost a piece of her. And it's just different in the way they seem to be handling the loss.
Yeah. And when I hear you say that, you all tell me if I'm being too callous. Because, yes, I'm trying to get the names right. Ruth lost a husband. But Naomi lost 2 sons and a husband. I mean, dealing with loss and having to try and count it and measure it against someone else's loss is always weird.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I would even want to try and do that. Both of them are hurting. And rightfully so. I mean, when you think about it, when you lose someone who's dear to you, it hurts. And so I think it's supposed to hurt because it wasn't what was meant to happen in the beginning. That's how I look at it. So it's going to hurt, and they're going to be trying times, but there's something about when you're going through it and experiencing the hurt and understanding that it's there and understanding the loss and things won't be the same, but still also recognizing that even in and through this, the Lord is still with you, that he still cares for you, that his perfections are still his perfections. His love for you hasn't waned. His care for you hasn't waned. His righteousness hasn't waned. His holiness hasn't waned. His immutability or his inability to change hasn't waned, right? He's still the same God that you served when everything was hunky-dory, leaving Bethlehem and Judah, going to Moab, as it is when you are returning from Moab, going back to Bethlehem and Judah. He's still the same God that you were happy with when you went out there. Right? So sometimes I think it's hard to see that, but there's something refreshing for a believer when they can hold on to that even when they're going through difficult times. Right? Because it was really all about what we think and how we think of the Lord. Right? As opposed to the circumstances that are going on and mulling around us.
And we don't see anything about how Ruth was mourning.
No.
I mean, Naomi's the one speaking, so we're seeing how she's like, God did this, God did that, but we don't know what Ruth is thinking. We don't know how it's impacting her. And I also feel like there's no expectation. Most parents don't have the expectation that your child goes before you. So she lost her husband, but then you see that her kids get married and there's 10 whole years after that. So this is like, all right, my husband dies, but then also my children who I think you don't know between like husband and wife who will go first. So your husband dies. Okay. But then your kids die. It's like, oh my goodness. Like, what else do you want to take from me?
Yep. So I don't know if I'm backtracking on what I said before with the amount of grief that may be going on with Naomi versus the amount of grief going on with Ruth. But I still think that the view of the Lord and his hand on you, right? He's dealing better with me. It's bigger than that to me. I don't know. Does that make sense? I mean, things will happen. Things change. But to think that the Lord is dealing better with me, I have to process that. I have to think through that a bit.
It reminds me a little bit of last chapter where the brothers kept feeling like everything was God's punishment. And so it could be the same, like, we left, we weren't supposed to be wherever we were supposed to be. We weren't supposed to marry these people that we married. We weren't supposed to do. And again, she's not as a woman, I don't know how much responsibility she takes in all of these actions because she's following her husband. Mm-hmm. But after the husband died, maybe she should have came home. We talk about like, y'all are sojourning for too long. Y'all need to go home. And so there could be some guilt, and she's feeling like it's too much though. Does this punishment match what we did wrong? Right. So she's like, yeah, I think to some degree, it looks like, yes, there's something to punish us for, but to her, this is too much.
Too much. That could be it. Because we didn't really touch on it, but the fact that they married Moabites, right? We again, go back and watch season 1, but we talked about it with Judah when he went and he married someone who wasn't of Israel, right? And then even before Judah, what is Jacob's brother Esau? He went and married outside of Israel, and he did that for spite's sake, right? Knowing that they didn't want that to happen. He was like, I'm going to go and marry somebody, that's not part of Israel on purpose. So how much of that all played in is a very good point.
I also find it like the name change, right? I feel like name changes happen frequently in the Bible. But her changing her name seemed to be out of spite to the Lord. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like when she follows up don't call me Naomi with the fact that the Lord has been dealing with her bitterly and has brought her back empty. So I interpreted that as like, because I feel like the Lord has every time there's a name change, it seems like the Lord is involved. Okay, so you have Saul and Paul, right?
Yeah.
Did I say that right?
Saul and Paul, but I wouldn't say that's the Lord changing the name. I think it's just the representation of that name in Roman times, right? Versus versus Israel or Jewish.
Oh, okay.
But you're right? Because you think Abram to Abraham, right? You think Jacob to Israel.
Yep.
Right. So there have been a number of name changes, and in that case, the Lord did that. Yeah. In this case, she's doing that. She's like, and my name is not Naomi. Don't call me that. You're gonna call me Mara. Yep. And I'm trying to see what that means. It means bitter. Okay. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So that I just found that really interesting that you feel that strongly about like your convictions. You're standing on the fact that the Lord has been, and I just don't know. I don't think I've ever felt, and maybe I just haven't experienced that level of like tragedy to feel like betrayed by the Lord. I don't know if like, even I'm trying to think like the worst things, like when I've experienced death, or like when my grandfather had his massive heart attack, I didn't feel like the Lord has forsaken me. Like I was like, I need to pray. Right. I need to pray heavy every day. I need to be on my knees. I don't think that but like, again, she's experienced like a different kind of loss. It's like losing your arms and your legs. Like I can't imagine that level of grief, but she feels passionately, clearly.
Yep. So Naomi is pleasant. Don't call me pleasant anymore.
I'm bitter.
Call me bitter. Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
But like, you should just have like a sour. You should eat a lemon every time you say Mara, so that you have the face that matches the whole bitterness. But that's an interesting point, because for the Almighty has dealt very, very bitterly with me. Right. Yeah. I also think it's interesting that she says there, I went away full. I had all of my family, and the Lord has brought me back empty. Is she really empty? Is she overlooking Ruth?
Yes, 100%.
I mean, so I think this is just more evidence of the fact that she's really in her feels right now, right? Mm-hmm. She's really in her feels about everything that she's lost.
Understandably, but come on now, like, it's also like how I said before last season, you have a car accident and you have two people in the car, both of them get out, one is like, oh my god, my car, and the other one's like, yay, I'm alive. There's things that are present around your situation that you just can't see when you're going through the depths of it, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, she didn't want Ruth to come, so
No, well, there's that.
I'm empty. I didn't ask this girl to follow me. So to me, I feel like she's not seeing Ruth that way yet.
Do you think she really didn't want her to come, or she was?
I think that she didn't want anything else bad to happen. It's like, what is the point of dragging someone else in my suffering? So no, she didn't want her to come. It's like, if anything, you're now a burden to me because I have to care for you and I have to figure out what to do with you.
Yeah, we read that completely different.
That's how I read it, because I feel like she was trying to be like, hey, go back to your mom because moms are going to take care of you. She was in the field, you said earlier, and overheard something. They didn't say the daughter-in-laws were in the field. Right. So she's still caring for them in a motherly way to me. Okay. And she's like, hey, go back to your mom. Go back to the person who should be caring for you. And she's like, nah, I'm going to go with you. And then you have to take care of that person. You don't just let them. I feel like you can't just let Ruth fend for herself, because now she's come with you. So it's like you brought her, even though you didn't want to, but you still have to take care of her.
Yeah. I read it as, I'm trying to save you from me. Not that I didn't want you to come.
I think I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason I say that is because the reasons weren't centered on anything but herself, and the fact that she couldn't offer anything.
Because she feels like she has to offer something. In order for me to keep you, I have to offer you something. Otherwise, why am I bringing you with me? I think looking at it as a mom, if I take somebody, like if somebody's like, I want to go with Auntie Maya, I'm like I don't want you. I don't want to not take you, but I will. But now that I take you with me, I have to take care of you. Everything I do for my kids, I got to do for you. So it's an extra person to take care of. Yeah. If I'm like, oh, I just want to, I have nieces and nephews that will be like, oh yeah, I want to go with you to so and so. Okay, like I guess, and we'll go. But now there's that extra. You have to take care of them even more than you would your own kid, because to me, it's like, I don't know, because whenever it was the same with my mom, if she had other people's kids, they got treated 10 times better, because it's just what you do as you're taking care of somebody else's child. You have to be extra. I imagine even with like Miss Wanda, the way she cares for her nieces and nephew is a lot. She probably doing a lot, and she might do a lot anyway, but to me it's a lot, because I'd be like, not with nieces and nephews. She's doing a lot.
No, and she does. She cares for them and looks after them as though they're her own.
Yeah. You have to.
Dare I say that she looks after them more than her own kids, because she dotes over them a whole bunch.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah.
Hence, they still in my pockets. But they do the same. She does the same, and looks at her nieces and nephews as though they're her own.
And you have to. And this is taking them away. This is taking her away completely now from her family. So
the difference to me is that we're not just talking about, we went to a baseball game last night and we took nieces and nephews with us. So we're not just talking about going to a baseball game.
We're talking about something worse.
We're talking about a complete life change, where I'm going to go to a completely different place where I don't have anything to offer for what the normal expectation for a young woman during that time is. I can't give you husbands because I've got no sons. I myself don't have a husband. I'm not going to marry, right? So to me, it's almost like I am telling you all of these things because even if I wanted you to go, even as much as I would like for you to go, because I won't be alone, right? That it may not be good for you to go.
Yeah. But now that you have come, I have to take care of you as much as I can.
Okay.
Which is what plays out later in the chapters. She's still taking care of her. Instruction comes from Naomi.
But we'll get to it.
Yeah,
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
But instruction comes from Naomi. Okay.
I was about to say. We get into it. We'll get into it.
We can bring this back up.
Yeah.
Because I think I see some things a little differently than you do, so it'd be cool to talk about.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like I literally in my head was saying like this is definitely a mom's perspective. When you were saying that before we even got deep into it, I said I think that you'll have like more of a mom's perspective because I feel like any mom would feel like that.
Yeah.
You know.
And that's why I feel like I'm like this.
I lost just on the fact that it's moms. I can't relate to moms.
Because like, and I think both perspectives can be valid. I definitely took it more like I'm saving you from me. I think I took it more like that, but I do think there with more people comes more burden.
Yeah.
Money. But I always think money. Like when my cousin would ask me to watch his twins, I'm like, it's two of them for one. I gotta make sure they both eat. Both of them, we gotta go somewhere. I gotta make some kind of fun. Like, okay, but like it's so much you gotta do to make sure you're entertaining children. So like, granted Ruth's not a child, but still like you have to make sure that you're being like your full self for the kids and doing everything you can do. So yeah, I definitely think both can be valid, but I didn't necessarily I took it more like she's down in the dumps and she didn't want them to be dragged in the dumps with her. So, but I'm excited to explore this more as we go through.
Yeah, it makes it. Dads are so different.
Very much.
Okay, bring the kids over. Make sure they got food. If you want me to watch them, bring me food and bring them food.
And we bring everything that's needed. Food is number one.
All right, y'all go do what y'all gonna do.
Yes.
As long as I don't
it is. Dads are like that.
As long as I don't hear no big bumps or thumps, or crying,
scream and cry.
And even if I hear a bump, I'm gonna pause and listen. And if I don't hear no noise,
go forward.
You're probably good.
Yeah.
You want something? Come get me.
Yes.
Other than that,
dads are different.
Y'all have y'all time.
Yes.
So from that standpoint, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, we'll leave it at that.
I'm excited to explore that in the next couple chapters.
Cool. Oh man. And then the last thing I'll say, and they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of barley harvest. That sets us up and brings us into the next 3 chapters, which we'll be able to get into next time.
Yes.
Any final thoughts on this chapter?
It's a really good introduction. Actually, this was the first time, like even from last season, where except for the Judah and Tamar story, I feel like that one came so easy for me. But like this one, even in like reading it and trying to break it apart, I felt like it flowed so well. I felt like I was reading a story.
Yeah.
And I don't always feel like that in the Bible, even though like a lot of it is storytelling. I don't feel, I'm confused a lot of the time. But I feel like I was finding the connections. Oh, and there was one other thing that we'll see more and more, but I'll just introduce it now. I think it's Matthew 5:4 or Matthew 4:5. But when it talks about mourning, like those who mourn will
blessed are they who mourn,
yes,
they shall be comforted.
Yes.
I believe it is, right?
Yes. She's not experiencing it right now.
I think that's 5.
5:4.
I think so.
Okay, I was trying not to switch them. I was trying to remember from this morning, but she's not experiencing that comfort right now. But I think that we'll start to see Ruth be that for her. We're introduced to that a little bit of what she says. Like she's trying to provide that reassurance for Naomi now. Like we're seeing that in this chapter, but I'm excited to see how that is explored more throughout the rest of the chapters. Yeah. And then there was one. I thought it was going to relate, but it was for the poor, not for those grieving. But I know that there's.
That's what the poor in spirit.
Yes. And also the one where it's like, it was saying, I think it's in Corinthians, talking about the good that you do for the poor, like those who do for those who have less will be blessed by the Lord. It's something, I'm paraphrasing, but I was trying to find I swear I saw one that was about grief, but essentially I was trying to relate like the things that Ruth is doing, will do, and has tried to put out there that she will do for Naomi now will wind up being very interesting, and I guess in the way that the Lord sees the good that we do. Does that make sense? I'm trying to figure out how to to frame that.
I think what you're saying.
You get what I'm saying?
I think I understand what you're saying. That Ruth is there, she's comforting, and that's going to have some impact in how Naomi's life winds up.
Yeah.
Right? And that there'll be some good that comes of it that the Lord is going to carry forward.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. You got
That's
it.
what I got.
You got it. I should have wrote it down. I was having a Moyo moment. I thought about it, literally, I thought about it this morning, and I screenshotted it at 3 a.m. I screenshotted it, and I was like, I have to make sure I remember how, but I didn't write down my thought. I just was like, these connect, and that was it.
Cool. Awesome. All right, folks, that's it for chapter 1 of Ruth.
Yes.
Excited to get through the rest of the season with you all, and with that said, we are out of here.
Deuces.
Bye.
Can that be our extra? Deuces.